Big issue, of course, continues to be what we're facing as a state with regard to the COVID scare and facing as communities. We have a lot to feel good about there, I think, in terms of broad trends and what we're seeing clearly. We have flattened the curve in California. We've been blessed since day one. 12, 13% of the country's population here in California, but just 3 or 4% of the cases and the tragic deaths from this disease. So we've been blessed from the get-go, but I think we now can say that we are particularly blessed just in terms of where we sit relative to the crisis and for the future going forward. That's certainly how it looks. A lot of great breakthroughs this week, right? We had some treatment breakthroughs. We had testing around the antibody breakthroughs. We had some great delivery over the last 2 weeks of medical materials and so forth. We'll break that down for you, maybe a release or something, a press release or an email. But great response from FEMA. We are so well stocked now in California, and so we're blessed that way. And obviously, we've got great healthcare workers in the fight every day, and so we appreciate them so much. Unfortunately, I'm feeling a certain amount of anxiety going into the weekend, mainly because this continues to be an unmitigated disaster for our small business owners. I mean, these folks are really, really hurting. To date, very few, if any, business owners in our communities have gotten some of the original PPP money, the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, we had a new wave last week. $60 million was set aside for community bank lenders and smaller lenders. Hopefully, that gets to the more mom and pop operations, which we, of course, have thousands of throughout the 49th Congressional District. And I'm talking to these folks every day. They are feeling real angst, so we hope for some success there. What I'd like to be able to do is see some of our great big picture relief and some of the great things that are happening with regard to the fight against this disease translate into hope for our small business owners. The problem is we're not seeing that. We're watching a governor and state leadership that seems to be caught in this notion of kind of, I don't want to say slow walking because that would imply that it's intentional, but we clearly don't have a governor who is reflecting a determination to ease us back into normalcy in California quickly and without a lot of overcomplication. You see that in the press conference a few weeks ago where they laid out the six rather vague notions about where we would need to get to before we could move forward. And then we just had an update 3 days ago, but unfortunately and rather shockingly, it didn't reflect any updates on those 6 key criteria, which I was really surprised and disappointed by. It did lay out 4 new stages, but there are 4 stages that are seemingly run out through almost 2 years and would seem to imply that it will be months before the vast majority of the workforce can get back to work, and it could be as much as 2 years or 18 months before we're back in church, back in having conventional weddings in California, back in movie theaters, watching with folks next to us, back to ball games, and other things where we're used to congregating. And that's a very, very pessimistic view and projection from our governor. And I think the whole thing is bogged down by 80-person task forces, which, I will tell you from a businessman's perspective are just the wrong way to go. And then this notion that we're going to have a bunch of digital roundtables where the governor is going to invite the press and talk about individual sectors specifically, hear from industry leaders and small business owners in the weeks to come, plural, the weeks to come, and that is going to precede any progress easing back into normal small business life. And that is horrible to hear, just awful. Right now, I don't believe our governor has one of 2 critical missing things, either the determination to ease back quickly and thoughtfully, or the business skill set. I don't know what you need to take, or he would need to take from roundtables. Small business owners are going to get in there and say, Governor, we're devastated. We're losing everything we've built with our life. We're losing our livelihoods. Families are being bankrupted that we can't bring back to work, and we're losing our best employers. They're moving to other jobs in other states, okay? And from industry leaders, he's simply going to hear from these men and women that they know their infrastructure, their business model, and their resources and human resources well enough to know that they can get back to work and open their doors, and they know enough how to keep their customers and their employees safe. I don't know why you need a bunch of roundtables to take that in and figure it out from there. So we'll see where things go. But I can tell you it doesn't look promising. And I'm hoping something changes in his direction, because California, there is too much at stake here. This is 40 million people, and it's just too much at stake to go overly cautious back into normal life. And by that I mean dragging it out 16 months and dragging out the basic restart with, the vast majority of business type getting back up and running with some safer best practices over the next few weeks. We just have to do that, or we are going to continue to devastate people and devastate families, business owners in particular. I spent a big chunk of my career as a financial planner, working with business owners, going through cycles with them of both their business development and their family planning cycles. I can tell you our business owners have invested blood, sweat, and tears into their businesses. They feel so personally about what they have built, and they are watching it dissipate. I'm having conversations with them these days where I'm seeing the pain in their eyes about having to break the hearts of employees, watching them leave the area, not being sure if they can ever have their business again with the same name at the same location. I will tell you, they are going to declare bankruptcy, so many of them throughout the state, if we continue on this path of super state control and slow walking the restart, or at least bogging it down, overthinking it. At the end of the day, we can be guided by science and scientists on the payroll, but we have to be led by a chief executive and executive leadership on a team. We need business people easing us back into normalcy, taking it all in from the scientists and other disciplines, but executing as business leaders, or we are going to be in serious trouble weeks from now in this state. And I have feared this for a few weeks as I've watched the governor signal a few things that concerned me. And you'll see that communication from me in the past. And I don't want to be pessimistic, and I don't want to be critical. And I did hear the governor say Thursday in a short update that he was reading the feedback, he was seeing the Twitter messages and everything else, and reading letters and taking it all in. And hopefully he'll have a moment of awakening where he recognizes that he's on the wrong path with this. So I remain hopeful about that. There's so much at stake in California. We have just got to ease back to normalcy while we're very careful and protective of vulnerable segments of society. Speaking about the vulnerable, obviously we've got a lot of frontline healthcare workers that are real champions right now. Our thoughts and prayers are with them through the weekend, and everybody else whose hearts have been broken by this disease or their families have been devastated by this disease. We hope the best and pray the best for all of you. And for our state, which is generally blessed in a relative sense, let's keep that in mind going into the weekend and hope for the best in the weeks to come. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll have an update for you again next Friday. We'll have a Wednesday town hall. County Supervisor Jim Desmond is joining us from San Diego.